How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Athletes Hub podcast. We've not had a weekly roundup in a while, so it's good to be back. Good to be back. A lot of different topics to discuss today as well. And as always, joining me to go through all of that is Mr. Flexx.
Yeah, happy to be back, guys. What's happening?
Yeah. How you doing, Flexx? Good?
Yeah, can't complain, man. Can't complain. But yeah, man, let's chop it up. Let's see what's on the docket for today.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. Like I mentioned in the intro, didn't do a weekly roundup last week, so there's a few things from last week we'd like to include into this week's roundup. But I think we've got to start with the North London derby. I know, last week there was a lot of uproar in the Arsenal fan base about their draw to Wolves away from home, and it just kind of felt like they had to win the game, to be honest, against Tottenham. They couldn't go into it, particularly with Man City winning as well. They couldn't go into it or leave the game with anything without a win. And Eze on fire again yesterday. I think he's got 5 goals, and all of them are against against Tottenham. So he loves scoring against Tottenham, it seems like. And I don't know. Arsenal are very good, and you kind of expected if they played at their best, right, they would win the game because Tottenham's injuries. But also on the flip side as well, I looked at Tottenham, and I'm thinking to myself, this team are in a lot of trouble. Like, they're in a lot of trouble. But what did you think about the game, and also what did you think about Arsenal's victory?
Look, I mean, it was what I expected from Arsenal. Whenever they've had setbacks, they're very good at responding, and there's no better time, better place to respond to but at a North London derby at, your opponent's stadium. So I think very, very strong response, some really good goals there as well, especially Gyökeres's goal, his second one, he took it very well. And to be fair, Colomwani's goal as well was a very good goal to take. Tottenham are in a lot of trouble. Will they get relegated? Probably not, but I think this is a very good response from Arsenal, throwing the gauntlet down to City to say, yeah, we're still here, we're still fighting, we still believe, and, they move on to their next game on Sunday against Chelsea at the Emirates.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Chelsea in a bit, but I think with Arsenal, again, it just kind of felt like they couldn't go into the game without winning it, because it just feels like, obviously, City beating Newcastle as well on Saturday. It just felt as if right now they can't be in a position where they drop any points, because, again, it is in City's hands. If they win all their games, they are champions. But something tells me that I don't think City will win all their games. And also with Arsenal, I think the Tottenham game, obviously, they won, and then Chelsea next week, Sunday. I think these are the 2 games that are going to really decide whether they can actually win the league or not. Because you look at the previous 2 games against Wolves and Brentford, both away, both in winning positions, and end up drawing the game. I think the 2 London derbies, obviously they've won one of them. The next one coming up, that's going to be the real test to see, not just in terms of the football, but in terms of their mentality as a team. Now, these are the games that London derby, Chelsea probably not going through the best of form, obviously, during against Burnley. But it feels like if Arsenal can get over these 2 next games, they're in a really good position where they can win the league. Because I don't think City, as much as they've got Pep in there and they've got key players, right, I don't think it's the same team we saw 3, 4, 5 years ago that can really go on that run and really threaten Arsenal. I still feel like Arsenal will drop points, but I still feel like City, between now and the time they play Arsenal in April, I don't think they're going to win all their 12 games. I mean, have you changed your stance? Do you still feel like City will win the league, or do you feel like Arsenal now are showing that, yeah, we can actually win the Premier League?
I don't agree with you saying that, Arsenal playing Tottenham or Chelsea. And I know, guys, I said, I'm trying not to say, okay. They play Tottenham yesterday. They play Chelsea. I don't think those games, those big games, are what Arsenal will have problems with. It's those smaller teams, the Brentfords. I know I said, again, guys, Brentford and those other teams around there. That's where the problem comes in. Those smaller teams, they don't care. It's a different thing when you play those guys versus when you play the bigger guys. I think Arsenal are good against the big sides.
I feel like the reason I'm saying that is because again, the last 2 games against Brentford away and obviously Wolves away, right? They've dropped massive points. Then you're probably thinking, if you're in a title race, you can't drop points in those matches, right? But these are London derbies. These are the games that I feel like their mentality will be decided in terms of if they can get over the line against these 2 London rivals.
They will, because
I
it's
thought
got
because
nothing
if
to
they don't win, if they don't take maximum points, I think okay, well maybe something in the mentality might be going wrong there. But if they can get over the line, that says to me they've overcome the adversity at that point.
the mentality is never about the big teams. You show your mentality where you can apply yourself against teams that you know you should beat. When you play Tottenham, you're not sure that you're going to be able to do that. It's a 50-50 game. It's a derby. You play Chelsea, it's a 50-50 game. It's a derby. You play United, it's a rivalry. You play, these teams, that's what that is. But you're expected. Arsenal's problem comes from when they are expected to do something and they don't come through. They're not expected to win these games. The ones they're supposed to win, expected, that's where the issue is. So I don't see Chelsea coming to the Emirates and beating Arsenal. I'm a Chelsea fan, but I don't see that happening. I think Arsenal do a job and do it convincingly and they move on. But when Arsenal go and play the likes of like Chelsea played Burnley and whatever, that's where their mentality, we need to see, are you champions? Because can you apply yourself in the same way against the smaller teams as you do against the bigger teams? That's the mentality. That's what we got to look at. That's what we think about. You mentioned that if Man City win all their games, they'll be champions. Arsenal win all their games, they're going to be champions. So that's where we are. They both win.
It comes down to the decider, isn't it? In April, when they face each other at the Etihad. But I feel like again we're still in February as well. We always forget that. I feel there's still a lot of twists and turns to go in the league for sure. Again, you look at City. Again, they've been there before. They've got a manager who's been there, who's done it. But I watched them against Newcastle, and in the second half, it just felt as if I watched Erling Haaland, and he ran everywhere in that game. Like he hunted down everything, and it just felt as if when it was 2-1, City had chances to kill the game off, right, to make it 3-4-1. But then again, Newcastle created a couple of opportunities where if they're more clinical in the final third, they actually score, get an equaliser. So there's still question marks about City and whether they can really sustain. I think even Pep come out and said that he doesn't think they'll win all their games from now to the end of the season. Because I just feel as if there's a lot of twists and turns to go. Arsenal will drop points for sure, but City as well, I think, will drop points there. But I mean, again, I think Arsenal as good as they were. Tottenham weren't great. Igor Tudor coming in there, his first game, North London derby. It kind of highlights how much work he's got to do, to be honest with you, because look at some of the goals yesterday. Some of their mistakes, particularly in the defensive phase of the game from Tottenham, were just criminal, to be fair. And as much as they've got a lot of injuries, right, this team doesn't look like a good team. They don't look like a team that has much attacking threat. I think Moani getting a goal, again, from Declan Rice's mistake. And you just look at the goals they conceded, right, it just didn't feel as if Tottenham won't get relegated, because I feel like it comes back to last season. There's teams below them, like West Ham and Forest, who are just worse than them. So as much as we have this thing as fans, as if, are they going to get relegated? No, I don't think that will happen. I think the manager will get them together. I think they'll become tougher to play against, tougher to beat, and they'll concede less goals. But again, the teams behind them aren't great. Forest losing 1-0 to Liverpool, West Ham getting a draw against Bournemouth. These teams are still going to give Tottenham a chance to stay in the league and be alive, basically. But yeah, I don't think Tottenham are going to get relegated, to be fair, as much as fans want that to happen.
Nah, it won't happen. They got their manager who's supposed to be a specialist at keeping teams afloat and so on. He's got one job only: solidify the defense, try and win a couple of games, get to that 40 points, and job done pretty much. And I guess maybe it's what they call a working interview to see if he would maybe be the manager full time. So he might want to take it serious too. I saw a clip where he was asking Van de Ven to push up, and Van de Ven just wasn't doing it. So I don't know if even the players respect any manager that comes in at this point, or if certain players like Van de Ven see themselves elsewhere come the summer. So he doesn't care what happens here. It's not a thing for him. So we'll see.
It's one of those ones, isn't it? It's like, you look at his CV, right? He's never been anywhere for that long. Probably about a year, a couple of months. He's not been anywhere for a long term. So I feel like it's a case of keeping this team in the league, get some momentum going, try and get the players back, and then get to the summer. And I believe that Pochettino is in a position to return to Tottenham. I know we spoke about this when Thomas Frank got sacked, but I feel like he's in a position where he wants to come back to Tottenham. I think he wants to come back to the Premier League. He's got unfinished business there. But if Tottenham to ever get relegated, right? I mean, boy, that would just be... Would that be the worst I don't know. Would that be the worst disaster from a club's perspective at Tottenham size in modern football for them to actually be relegated in the Championship?
Yeah, to be relegated without cheating, like Juventus did and so on, would be absolutely crazy. But it would also go to show that the Premier League, there is you have to respect your opponents. You got to respect the teams you're playing against, because anyone can get it pretty much,
Yeah.
But Tottenham at this moment, I would say, are too big to fail. And also the teams, like you mentioned, that are beneath them, they are performing at a much lower level than Tottenham are. If this was another season where those teams are performing at a decent level, it would be a dogfight. It probably could go to the last game of the season, but I just can't see that happening here. So I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine, man. But you mentioned Chelsea earlier, 1-1 draw at home to Burnley, leading the game through João Pedro, and then Burnley get, I think, was it Fofana who got sent off, isn't it? Got a red card.
That's right. Yeah, he got a red card. Yeah,
and then Burnley get an equaliser in stoppage time. You mentioned that you're not confident that Chelsea can go to Arsenal and get a result. Is that because of the back of this result, or do you just feel as if you compare Chelsea and Arsenal, that they're just on two different levels right now? And also, what is your thoughts on the draw against Burnley?
Yeah, I mean, taking your question in, they're not on the same level. The teams are not the same. You've got a bunch of kids which can't seem to concentrate, which is expected because they're young. They can't keep their head on for a full 90, so it is kind of what it is with that. And then you've got a team that's actually motivated to want to win something. If we win nothing this season, we go again next season. It is what it is. We know it's a long-term project, blah, 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 blah. But so with
Chelsea, is there really a long-term project at Chelsea?
Well, based on what the owners want, they want to be able to build a young team, sell players on, bring players in, etc. They have what they want to do. Whether it's long-term for the manager or not, that's a different story. But what they want to do with the club as a whole, it's a whole project. So I don't think going to Arsenal and losing is the end of the world for Chelsea. It's just about qualifying in that top 5 and keeping it moving. Whereas Arsenal, they've got to win that game to, keep their title hopes alive. So it's teams that are looking at things from two totally different lenses. Maybe Chelsea go into that game, with the heart and mind that we want to stop Arsenal winning the league. And that would be nice. But do we have the tools in the toolbox to be able to do it? Nah, we don't. And it showed when we played them in the semi-final. We just don't have it. It was a decent game, but we don't have it.
We look at Chelsea now, because obviously we speak a lot about sort of the yesteryears and the Chelsea teams that we grew up watching, like the powerful teams that won trophies and always in the conversation for major honours like the Champions League. And Chelsea would always win a cup, whether it's a Carling Cup at the time or the FA Cup, or they'll win the Champions League final or semis. We look at the current Chelsea team now, and obviously there's a different regime, a different time in football. And you look at, the teams from, yesteryear that we've spoken about. Is the expectation still the same? Because I look at, for example, the goalkeeper situation, the centre backs. I don't look at Chelsea and feel as if Chelsea have a top team here. Like if the aim for the owners is to win big trophies, I don't see it in the recruitment, to be honest with you. I mean, what's your thoughts on Liam Delap coming from Ipswich? He's had a few injuries, been out the team. He's coming in the team on Saturday. Hasn't really got going at Chelsea. He's probably an example of, again, maybe the recruitment not going to plan. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, they signed Delap because for his profile and potential, it was a steal because his Ipswich got relegated, right? So 30, 40 million. I think everybody was trying to sign Delap, and he chose to come to Chelsea. Delap, I think, is a good player, but currently isn't showing what he can do in the side. And I don't know for what reasons that is. Maybe it's because at Ipswich, they would carpet bomb the box with spamming crosses in there. And at Chelsea, Pedro Neto gets the ball, runs down the wing, chops. And then when he finally does decide to put the ball in, it's the worst ball you could possibly put into the box. So it makes it hard for strikers, to feed off that type of delivery, So it's a challenging one for him. And I feel like the style of football just doesn't suit his style of being the forward. We need someone who's happy to come, link play, do all it. Like, weirdly, a Nicholas Jackson comes in, links play, runs in behind, this type of stuff. Delap wants to be a target man forward where the ball comes to him, he holds it, he sticks it, moves it off out wide, gets into the box, and then tries to score a goal, but it's just not what we do at Chelsea. And with the game against Burnley, honestly, I could see that coming a mile away. It's happened so many times at home where we've been ahead against the teams that we should be beating. And like I said about Arsenal, it's about having the same dogged mentality you would have against the bigger clubs as you would do the so-called lesser clubs, and doing a professional job and getting the job done. And we just never seem to be able to do it. So 1-1, it is what it is,
Yeah. Before we move on, when you look at the season so far, do you think Chelsea are where they expected to be at the start of the season?
I think we should be a little further ahead, is what I feel, considering the points dropped at home. But again, you're playing with a bunch of kids, so the mentality and consistency is just never going to be there. So what do you expect? And owners should be looking at this and thinking, well, I feel like the spine of a team should have mature players, at least one mature player in that spine. Like we had Thiago Silva in there at one point, and then you could have a bunch of kids around him, but at least he's there to marshal the defense and keep things calm and keep things going. And then you have another central midfielder who is a little older, but is, a quality player. Like, for example, imagine if we had like a Pogba in that midfield. He's won stuff, etc., etc. He knows, how to slow a game down, how to speed a game up, all of these things. And then you have a centre forward who's just a guaranteed bagsman. That's the spot where you can't put a kid in there. You put someone, like if you could find a regen of an Aguero or something like that, you put that person there, and that's your guaranteed goal scorer. And that's what you do. But it is what it is, man.
Yeah, you're right. We'll come back to Chelsea, one of their players, and also one of the Birmingham players in our next segment, actually, because I want to talk about something that happened last week in the Champions League. And I'm sure you've heard about this. And that was the alleged racist abuse that Vinícius Júnior suffered when they played against Benfica. After he scored a great goal, by the way, he went to the corner flag to celebrate. And that, again, prompted allegedly some racist abuse from one of Benfica's players, Prestiani. And it was a shame, really, wasn't it? Because I felt like a great goal and a good game was overshadowed again by like racist abuse. And we speak about this a lot, and it just feels like in football, right? Because I think there's a few things to kind of unpack here in terms of the reaction to it, Benfica's statement when they came out, and also Jose Mourinho's response to the situation as well. And it feels like when it comes to racism in football, we're still having this battle in 2026. After all these campaigns that have happened, whether it's Kick It Out, whether it's the Black Lives Matter taking a knee during the COVID period, it feels like we're still not really getting to grips with it, And what's your thoughts on? Did you watch the game? Did you see the incident? Like, what's your thoughts on the whole situation? And I guess racism in football as a whole.
Yeah, I watched the game. It was a decent game. Madrid should have definitely have won that game, 4 or 5-0 with the opportunities that they had. And as you mentioned, a very good finish from Vinícius Júnior. And unfortunately, it seems like it's always him, but we know it's not always him, because we know other players suffer racial abuse, not just in the major European leagues, but also in the minor European leagues, in countries like
even around the whole world, like South America, particularly.
It happens. It happens, and racism is a societal issue. That's the racism, and we have people that are from different walks of life in society coming into one particular place, and their only way of maybe getting under the skin of someone is to try and say something which they deem could be the most hurtful thing they could say to someone, to try and get a reaction or to try and hinder their performance, etc., etc. But to receive racial abuse from fans, that's one thing. They're not your peers, they're not your colleagues, they're not anything to you. But to hear it from a colleague by way of another professional in your sport is, well, allegedly, as you mentioned, is totally unacceptable. And one thing I would say is that if you didn't say anything that was racial, like we've all heard from various pundits, then there would be no reason to cover your mouth with your shirt. Now, if it's true that you did not say this, and let's say it can be proven, then I would say there should be something that is sanctioned against Vinny for telling lies. But one thing we do know, right, if we go back to Enzo Fernandez at Chelsea, is, and that wasn't so long ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, that these Argentinians, they seem to be racist. That's just what it is. It seems like their default thing is to go and display racism to other people of color. And we've seen it time and time and time again. So do we doubt that someone from Argentina against a rival nation like Brazil and someone who is of black ethnicity, that he said that? It's more likely that he said it than unlikely, is what I'm trying to get at.
And Flexx, I mean, like, I sit and I think about it, right? I'm thinking about in 2026, right? Of all these, I know in England we've got these campaigns.
It doesn't matter, man. You're saying everyone says in 2026, like racism is supposed to go somewhere.
No. I'm just thinking, to your point about, you said if it comes from fans, it happens, right? These things, it's a societal problem, which I'll get onto. But for your colleague on the football pitch to say that to you on a pitch in this day and age, right, with all the awareness that's gone on and all the potential ramifications that you could face by using this language, for you to still say that casually. I know he's put his shirt over his mouth, and clearly, if you've got nothing to hide, why would you do that? But for people to still openly do that now is baffling to me. Like, it's I don't understand it.
Did you think that the kick it out stuff is happening in flipping Portugal and these places?
It's not. But UEFA have made it clear. He plays for a European club, right? And listen, I've been to Benfica. I went there, a couple of years ago. I went to Portugal. Went there, learned about history. Went to the museum. It's a great club with great history, right? But situations like this are disappointing, Flexx, because again, not only has he come out and allegedly he said what he said, but you've said it openly to an opponent on the pitch where there's cameras, where, again, UEFA have said there's a minimum of 10-game ban for anyone who's found guilty of racism, and players still do it, not caring about the potential consequences of doing that. But also, as well, you mentioned it's a societal problem, which is true. It comes from society, comes into the stadiums, and whether it's fans on players or whether it's players on players, it still happens, right? But you have to ask the question, if it happens in society, right, what's the punishment? It's a criminal offense, isn't it?
It's a criminal offense, and
exactly. So why don't we use those same sanctions that you face as a criminal in society, in the real world that we live in? Why not use that in football terms? Why do players get a minimum of a 10-game ban to then walk back into that same environment a couple of weeks or wherever, a few months later, and then pretend that nothing's happened? Because if we did that in our job, if somebody's racist in our jobs, right, you wouldn't get a 10-week suspension. You'd be sacked, and then that would follow criminal proceedings. So to kick it out, to make a real stamp, right, in football, why don't we use those same procedures we use in the society, in the real world that we live in, right, and use those same punishments in football terms? Because if you do that, if players get sacked, right, and clubs actually get hit properly, you might not see these silly statements that Benfica have come out and saying that, well, Mbappe was so and so yards away, so you couldn't have heard what he said. Like, that's your response to racism. In your statement, you didn't once say we condemn racism. You're saying that you stand by your player, and Mbappe wasn't anywhere near him, so he couldn't have said what he said. Like, that's your response. And you're saying that Eusebio is your top scorer, so you can't be racist. That's stupid. Of course they're going to love Eusebio, because he scored all those goals for them. It was a pivotal part. And I went to Benfica and I saw the history. He's pivotal part in their history, Flexx. So of course their fans are going to love him. Do you think fans don't love Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson in America because of what they've done? Of course they're going to love him. They're not going to be racist to him. But when he misses a few chances and doesn't do what he's done, then we'll see what attitude's like then. So you use the proper sanctions, right, in society, bring him into football, but then clubs will say, oh, we can't sack our players because they're investments. Well, I'm sorry, but what's more important? Is it your bank balance as a football club, or is it your reputation in the long term? Which one matters? Which one is more important to you? You got to hit Flexx. You've got to hit clubs properly. These kick it out campaigns, and you were given a minimum 10-game ban. No, but he can come back in. He can come back in there a couple of months later, play with the same colleagues, and pretend like everything's fine because his club have come and said that they stand by him, and the opponent couldn't hear what he said because that's your response to racism.
You know what it is? You know what it is, right? The players are not helping themselves as well, right? And I would say the players that are of other ethnic origin. If I'm a player and my colleague has said that he was racially abused, I'm saying, yeah, I'm walking off the pitch. We ain't coming back. Because walking off the pitch and the game being abandoned because we are not playing. So imagine Trent walks off, Tchouameni walks off, Camavinga walks off, Mbappe walks off, Vinny goes off. That's 5 players. Rudiger, 6. We ain't coming back. Now they got to do something about it because it's a very bad look for UEFA that the game has gotten abandoned, right? But you guys make a fuss about it and then continue playing. So you're not right. Hitting them in the pockets. You're not hitting them in the pockets. The pockets get hit when the game gets abandoned and there's money that's lost, a game that couldn't be completed because of racial abuse. Now they actually have to do something about it because if they don't, guess what? What if others start doing this across different leagues? Now we're in big trouble. So we actually have to do something about it. But the players are not helping themselves because they're following so-called protocols or so-called whatever. Well, you know those protocols don't work. So create your own. If I'm racially abused, every person of ethnic origin should just walk off the pitch. And we are not back. If they can't find enough subs to continue the game, we are not coming back. That's just, it is what it is. I will not stand up for racism. But guess what? They do stand for racism because guess what? They continue to play the game. They continue to play. So what's the point? Because now we've got all of these different organizations, right? Where people are getting funded from wherever they're getting funded from, and they're probably getting funded by the same racist organizations that are actually not helping them. So it's almost like, how can you really do anything? Because you got this whole kick it out. What's kick it out done besides run ads and campaigns? Like, really, what have they done? I mean, I can't sit here and say I've seen them do like things that have really moved the margin. No, because players are like Semenyo when he was Bournemouth against Liverpool. Racial stuff happened over there, you know. So it's like, really, walk off the pitch and everyone of ethnic origin, we're not playing. That's it. And if you want to be really serious about it, then you just have a blackout. You're going to just say, you know what, next week, if you're of ethnic origin, you all have your own committee, your own group amongst yourselves. Maybe Rio Ferdinand is the leader or Samuel Eto'o or someone like that. And then you just say, you know what, this week is a blackout. We are not playing. No one is playing. And then see if they will do something about it or not. Because let's be honest, right? A lot of these teams, their most talented players are of ethnic origin. You know, they are all coming from somewhere else. You know, they're not fully blood Italians or full blood Spaniards or full blood English players or whatever the case is. They're all coming from different walks of life, you know. And when I say ethnic origin, I'm saying that even if you're Bulgarian and you're playing in the Premier League or in Spain, that counts. You're not of national ethnicity to the league you're playing in. So you should also look at that and say, you know what? I stand with those that are of ethnic origin. We ain't playing until this is solved. But mate, like I said, it's a society.
You're right, and I think I was disappointed because I was thinking, like, if you're a Benfica playing, you're hearing that this is potentially to happen. Automatically, my mindset is, well, also I'm like Vinícius, I'm black as well. So if my colleague has said that about him, what does he think about me secretly? So therefore, regardless of the teams that we play for, I have to make a stand with my colleague who plays for a different club, who also comes from the background I come from. But players didn't do that, Flexx. But again, it comes down to clubs taking a real hit. But if clubs are coming out saying, making statements, saying, and again, the first thing that Benfica said in their statement wasn't even the fact that they condemn racism, entirely, right? It was a case of, well, we stand by a player, we believe what he said. You know, the so-and-so opponent wasn't near, so you couldn't hear. Like, you didn't even come out and say you condemn it at all. That was what was disappointing. And the players probably thinking, well, do you know, I'm all right because I can get away with this now because my club I've said that I'm in a clear. So we haven't got to do an investigation. UEFA will investigate it. But if players are getting these messages, Flexx, yeah, what does that mean? There's no like football clubs have to punish their own at times. But again, it comes down to hitting, as you said, hitting clubs where it hurts, and that's their pockets. Now, players will say, well, clubs will say, well, we can't sack our players because we've given them contracts, we've invested money in them. But again, it comes down to it. What's more important to you, your reputation or your bank balance as a football club?
Mate, it's always going to be the bank balance, because at the end of the day, next week will come, we'll win a game, and we'll all just
You'll be forgotten about.
It will be forgotten about. Like, that's just what this is. And let's be honest, Benfica have just shown their hand. I don't care about this stuff. It's at a point now, it's become tribalism. You know, it's us versus them. They may not even be racist. It's just the fact that it's us versus them. So that's just what it is.
I'm not saying it's racist, but if you've got a player being accused of something as serious as this, you have to come out. I don't think their response really diffused the situation. Even Mourinho, when he said that, he told Vinícius, like, you scored a great goal. Why would you celebrate like that? Like, you're provoking. I'm thinking, well, that's coming from Jose Mourinho, the man who was made iconic for his run down the touchline at Old Trafford in 2004, the man who does knee slides when Roman just scored, the guy who's poking people's eyes out, you know, the same man who ran onto the pitch when Inter Milan beat Barcelona. I'm sorry, but Mourinho is not the benchmark for good behaviour or in football. He's not. So when he came out and said that, I was disappointed in Mourinho because I didn't think that would be his response. Do you know what I mean? But again, it goes back to years ago when Suárez was accused of racially abusing Patrice Evra. Liverpool came out wearing Suárez t-shirts.
Yep. Again,
you know I mean? So it's like, I'm not saying that. But you can support someone internally, but coming out wearing t-shirts to me suggested that even if he's guilty, you're still going to support someone who does that.
Us versus them. It's us versus them. This is what it's become, tribalism. Because what? There was other black players there. They also wore the shirt. It's us versus them. That's the mentality. It's the wrong mentality, but that is the mentality, and that's how they see racism. I mean, have you ever heard someone be racist and then they'll say, "Oh yeah, but my best friend is black."
Yeah, but all the time. Yeah, it's a justification.
What happens? You know what I mean? Or they're racist and then they say, "Oh, but you're all right," because it's not even like, they don't even see it as like it's racism. It's more like tribalism. So they don't look at you as a black person or as another color that's not, you know, white. They just see you as, they align with your mindset and your ideologies and stuff like that. So you're not like them, even though you look like them. You know, it's more complex than just color. You see what I mean? It's more, there's more nuance to what we see as racism, because there's a whole load of tribalism involved and a whole load of other things that get blended in. Because like you said, this guy, if he's made a racist comment, his teammates are also black.
Yeah.
So what's the story there then? So do you think of me the same way you think of Vinny? He'll tell you no, because he actually knows you. He don't know Vinny. So his go-to to say something that would hurt someone was, "You black monkey," because he feels like it's going to hurt them. Does he mean it? No, he just wants to say something that's hurtful, which is the wrong thing to do. So it's deep. It goes deeper, because I don't see black people walking around or people from other ethnic groups walking around saying, "Oh, you white monkey." It's not something that we would go to and say. Yeah. But it's just, there's a lot of education and whatnot that needs to be done. But let's be honest, it's not going to be done. So all of these campaigns and all this nonsense just needs to stop. And the real action is on the actual players that are affected, that if this happens to you, you and people that look like you should just walk off the pitch and kill the game. And after that happens a few times, because the racist wants to play, you know what I'm saying? They will know better. They know that, "Oh, mate, if I say this, they're going to stop the game."
Well, I mean, listen, that was on the pitch. Listen, off the pitch, following Saturday's 1-1 draw, Chelsea-Burnley, it also emerged that, you know, Wesley Fofana and Hannibal, both respectively of Chelsea and Burnley FC, also received racist abuse online. So we've just gone from an incident on the pitch to racist remarks on social media, which happens quite often. The difference was that Wesley Fofana actually showed screenshots of the messages that he received. But I think all of this we're talking about, Flexx, my thing is, what are we doing realistically to really combat this stuff? And social media, listen, people create accounts, dozens of accounts, they use it for various, dealings, and a lot of it, unfortunately, a lot of the people who post racist comments don't have a profile picture. They hide behind these icons and hide behind all these different emojis. But I think it'll come down to a point, and for social media companies have been called out a lot about what are they really doing to combat this stuff. And I think maybe it might come down to a point where anyone who wants to use a social media account, who wants to create an account, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, X, whatever it might be, might have to do it with passport details. Because if you really want to track down users who make these comments, right, there needs to be a real direct route. But then again, companies might say, well, we can't take people's passport details because we might lose users. And again, users will say, well, I'm not going to give my passport details to a social media company. But what do we want? Do we want people to be racially abused? Or as a company, do you want people to go on your particular platform and use it to racially abuse players? And again, players might say, well, I'm not going to have a social media account because I'm going to be subject to racist abuse. But then again, agents who manage those players will say, well, you've got to have a social media account because we get money from that as well. So again, what do we want? Do we want this to stop? And are we going to put real punishments and sanctions down and have real safe, I guess, procedures to allow people to use social media? Or are we just going to use the same language we use again? Okay, we're doing everything we can to stop this, etc., etc. It feels like there's a lot of mixed messaging from people who use the accounts, but also those who say they want racism to stop. What are we really doing to? Again, it might not just be racism; it might be homophobia, or anything or any hate crime. What are we doing to really clamp down on these things? Because it's the same thing, Flexx. After next week, we'll focus on something else. That's how it goes.
That's how it goes. And look, these big companies, they can screen messages and so on before they're released, and they can even have messages that are deleted and so on if hate is being detected. So not sure why that's not happening, because they can definitely do that, and I would say a lot of these things, they're bots anyway, so like people create these bots, fake accounts and so on, and then they target different people, players, whoever, with hate crime. And that's just what it is,
But again, I think there has to be stricter ways for people to create these accounts. If you're gonna create an account,
I agree with you. There should be some form of ID that has your name and your address if you want to be on social media. That's what I think should happen, because then that way everyone will be on their best behavior. But then guess what will happen? There will be a version of social media that's on the dark web or someplace like that where there's no governance, and that's where that hate crime will continue, and it will then somehow surface from the hidden shadows of the dark web into the web that we all come to know and love. So it's one of those things.
Listen, no matter what we do, it's going to emerge somewhere, isn't it? But again, I think it just comes down to, before we move on to the last section, hit clubs hard. If you start taking points off football clubs, you start, taking money off them, they'll act. The fans will behave because the teams are being thrown out of competitions. They're being deducted points in the league, and also clubs will say, "Well, our pockets are being hit now, so we've got to stop this from happening." Right? Until you do that, I think, again, in football anyway, we're still going to have these issues, because in society, if we're saying it comes from society into the football grounds, then what punishments are we giving that society? Let's use that same approach when it comes to football. Hopefully, that will change. But listen, lastly, finishing on the positive note for Mr. James Milner, on the weekend became the Premier League player of the highest ever appearance record. Listen, James Milner's been a great pro over the years. He's 40 years old, by the way. He's 40 years old. He's still going off strong. And you look at footballers. Listen, when we were growing up, we all wanted to be a certain footballer. A lot of those flair players, when he scored a lot of the goals, got the assists. But if you're a young football player now, right, I'm looking at people like James Milner, who has been a fantastic professional throughout his whole career. I think he started when he was about 15 years old, 16 years old at Leeds United. Came up through the ranks, got into the first team, played for the likes of Newcastle, Villa, Man City, Liverpool, went on to win a few Premier League titles, won the Champions League. Now I'm looking at players like him, like Gareth Barry, players who have a longevity in their careers, right, and are great professionals. Because as much as we look at those players who have maybe been great goal scorers over the years, or have been those flair players we like to watch, these are model professionals. These are proper pros. And I think he's been a great servant. And fans might not look at him and think, oh, he's one of our favorite players because he doesn't score enough goals, doesn't get the assists right. But as a team player, he's a manager's dream because he does everything. He plays at right back. He's a midfield. He's a winger. As a teammate as well, you probably think, well, we can rely on this guy because he turns up every week, at least a 7 out of 10. He's reliable, does the hard yards. He's a great player, James Milner. I think he deserves to be where he is right now.
100%. I can't say anything more than what you said. You've given him the highest praise there, and I can only agree. What a man, what a player, and I'm sure he will get a few more appearances to his name to solidify that spot. And I wonder, looking through the leagues, who would be able to come and match that? I just don't see it happening. I
think if you look at Gareth Barry's record, that was there for years. And, it takes, again, you have to look at the eras. Obviously, Milner started in Gareth Barry's era in the early 2000s. Obviously, Barry came in Villa's team in 1998, I think it was. I think Milner made his debut in 2002, maybe. So that era of player, I don't think you'll see that replicate again because players don't play for that long now.
No, they don't. I mean, you would even say that both Barry and Milner, they would have been considered wonder kids at their time because of the age that they even got into the first team. And, you stay long enough in the game for you to win as much trophies as Milner's won and all the experience he's garnered. I'm just looking around and I'm just wondering, who could be the next one up to have a feat like Milner? And I just don't see it. There isn't a wonder kid that I would say that is maybe could Kobbie Mainoo be the guy? He's there, he's performing well, he's young. Could Saka be the guy? He's young, who else is around there that came
but
through?
I think sometimes as well, though, Flex, it depends. Are they, because Gareth Barry and obviously Milner played in the Premier League all their careers, right? They didn't go abroad anywhere, they played in the Premier League. Whereas some of these players like Kobbie Mainoo, they might go into other leagues one day. They might go to play in Serie A, maybe in La Liga. But if you look at their positions, like Milner and Barry, they played in midfield, and that takes a lot of your career. It's box to box. It's demanding on your career. Think about how many and the eras they played in, Flex. They were getting kicked out of, getting lumps kicked out of them in midfield back in those days to playing now, right? Where fitness is so important. It takes a special type of character to be able to survive in those eras, and they've done it perfectly, in my opinion. Because strikers play a long time, but in midfield, you're probably thinking, well, it's a demanding position. How well do you have to look after yourself to really play that long?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've seen James Milner's shin pads and they're like this big. Nowadays, they got these shin pads that they're wearing are like this big. So there is no chance of those players, surviving and having the amount of appearances because you've never really heard of James Milner being injured, really, have you? It just doesn't happen. He's just a well-oiled machine and looks after himself and does all the right things outside of football so that he can be very present in football. I would love to know, will he be a manager one day? I feel like that's the type of person who looks like, with all the experience he's got as a player, could probably be a fantastic manager. Maybe somewhere down the line, maybe even an England manager. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Right. It's a good point. But yeah, I think he has to round up again. He's a great professional. And again, we look at the players like, for example, like Ronaldinho, Adriano, who are fantastic footballers who want everything there is to win. But you look at someone like Milner's career, 40 years old, 653 Premier League appearances. I mean, it's phenomenal, isn't it, really, what he's done? And yeah, a great player, man. But Flex, has been good to catch up today as always. I know there's been a few, deep conversations in there, but it is what it is. It's all part of it. And guys, let us know in the comments, what do you think about our topics? I mean, will Arsenal go on to win the Premier League? Do you think City will still win it? Chelsea, what's going on with their season? Are you optimistic? And again, your thoughts on the racism stuff as well, because I think we all want a game that is clean. We want a game that's welcome for everybody, and we're still having the same conversations that we've been having in the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So what do you think needs to change? And let's get some love for James Milner as well, by the way, because he doesn't get a lot of love, James Milner. I know he played for Liverpool, but still, he deserves that love and that credit. So let us know what you think about his career in the comments. Flexx, as always, has been good. And then also, guys, like and subscribe. And they're on TikTok now as well. We're on Instagram, so follow us on there for all the latest content. Flexx, as always, it's been a pleasure, and I will catch you in the next one.